We're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. All right, so before we start our order of business, we will have a presentation of the drinking water expansion report from Dirigo Engineering.
Thank you. My name is Rick Pershkin. I'm here with Jim Lord from Fairfield Engineering right down the street.
You need to be at the podium with the microphone.
Yeah, we'll get there. I'll get there.
Or people out in the world won't hear you.
Hi, is it on? Yeah.
Yes.
Rick Pershkin from Dirigo Engineering. I've got Jim Lord here with me tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the draft report that we prepared to try to find some solutions for the PFAS contamination in Fairfield. So the purpose of our report was to evaluate the public water supplies options out in the area to serve those PFAS contaminated properties. Everybody knows by now that the PFAS are these forever chemicals. The testing is ongoing. We know it's associated with the biosolids, municipal sludge, and things like that, and it's widespread in Fairfield. Part of Fairfield is now served by the Kennebec Water District, and the downtown is on the Kennebec Water District grade in this area here. And then the Fairfield Center area is served by a booster station that's located on Center Road there, and it boosts the water out there. It's called a constant pressure system. There's no tank on it. It doesn't have a lot of fire protection, but it's adequate to serve the homes and businesses out there. We looked at various options in the report: surface water, new surface water supply, groundwater supply, other existing supplies, like potentially Goodwill Hinckley has their own supply, and we could extend that, but none of those were feasible. The costs were very high. Groundwater, you almost have to go to Norridgewock to get groundwater to get out of the PFAS contaminated area. So those options are discussed briefly, but they're really not any good option there. And the only real option is the KWD. And the KWD is willing to do this. They have the necessary capacity to expand it, but they're concerned about a couple of things. Mainly the age of the water in the system, because their water comes from China Lake, the treatment plant's out there. It's pumped from Waterville up to the reservoir, the twin reservoirs, then it gets to Fairfield here. So it takes a long time, and as that time occurs, the chlorine residual decays. The chlorine is what keeps the water safe to drink bacteriologically. So there's been some concerns about the chlorine residuals out at the ends of the lines there. So part of this study, a large part of the study, was doing some groundwater quality monitoring. We developed a model. We added on to the existing Kennebec Water District model, and then we did some water quality simulations to show that we could make this project happen. And I think the Kennebec Water District agrees with that, and they're on board with this. So I think that was one major hurdle here, and I think we've gone past that now. So I think what we're going to do is, we have to have a few bleeders at the end. I don't know if you notice that sometimes now at the end of the KWD system, like up here in Shawmut, there's a fire hydrant with a hose. They're running some water there to keep the water fresh and keep the chlorine residuals up there. And they do that at various other places in the system. We will probably have to do this, but one of the main parts of this project is a big loop around Nye's Corner, which will help circulate the water around there and keep everything fresh. So the project, as we envision, is going to take several years to complete. So we kind of broke it up into 3 tentative phases, and these can be adjusted based upon need. We tried to pick phase 1 as the low-hanging fruit, stuff we could get out there. Even at the cost of $8.5 million, you're calling it a low-hanging fruit. But it's the places that you can get to with just simple main extensions that need no modifications to the system right now. And that's phase 1. And Michelle asked us, I know I have to stay at the podium here, I'm going to hold this up then. So Michelle asked us to just kind of split out the phase 1 cost there, and that's what we've done with the handout in front of you, the phase 1 cost there, with the construction costs and the engineering costs. So phase 1 involves these blue highlighted extensions. We've got an extension on Norridge Walk Road. We're going past the area of contamination with this, but we're planning on continuing with this. So we're coming out here on the 6 Rod Road to get some of this contamination out here to help some of these people. Another extension out the Ohio Hill Road to the Fish Street intersection, or Ridge Road intersection out there. And then another small extension right over here in Shawmut to get these people over in here. That's basically phase 1 in a nutshell. Sorry, another one here on short one on Bickford Drive, because there's some contamination out there also. So that's the phase 1 there. And we don't need a reservoir, we don't need to do anything else that system there. We may just have to run those bleeders at the ends of these lines a little bit. But everything looks like it will work fine with that. We have an estimated cost of $8.4 million, and in our schedule, if we get started on this, and Jim's going to talk to you about funding and stuff, shopping this project for funding later. If we get started on it this year, it's possible to probably construct that in 2023. Phase 2 is everything that's in green on this, and it's probably the most important part of the project for water quality, because phase 2...
They'll still pick you up. You'll be
Well,
fine.
okay. Phase 2 will complete a loop around the Ridge Road back to the booster station, which is here, and also a loop all the way around to the end of the Shawmut line, which is here. So that will allow us to flow water around these loops and keep the chlorine residuals up there. But this here is the most expensive part of it, because it also requires adding some chlorine at the booster station here now, and building a standpipe up on the top of Wilcox Hill or at one of these other alternative locations that we've picked here. The last thing is because we talked about, this is the boosted system over here in Fairfield Center, and this is the lower pressure here in Fairfield proper. So the water pressure is higher here. So we're going to naturally let some water slip around and come around here, but we're also going to have a valve here, what's called a pressure reducing valve. And that will open if there's any fire flows out here, so we can feed high rates of fire out there, in addition to making that loop go around, and also looking at some potential extensions up the road here. We'll talk about in just a minute. Okay. So the estimated cost of that project is $17.2 million.
Yep.
And construction in 2024 or 2025. At this point, I want to take everything, it's still a preliminary draft report, and we're probably going to be adjusting these numbers upwards, unfortunately, because of some feedback we got from the Kennebec Water District. Phase 3 then would be these long pink extensions out to here, up the Norridge Walk Road, up the Middle Road to grab these, coming down Oakland Street and going up to Gagnon Road here to get the rest of this contamination. Now, we've still left a few people isolated out here. At some point, maybe the water system could be extended to them, but we kind of left this out of the report because it didn't seem to be much bang for the buck to get out to these isolated places. I know that it's ongoing, and they've also identified some contamination in this area here that's not shown on this map, and we'll have to update that, but we may be able to get that with just another short extension there. off of that on either Phase 1 or Phase 3. So Phase 3, those long extensions, those are estimated cost of $14.3 million, and construction probably in 2026 or 2027. And so we have a total estimated cost at this point of $39.9 million, but I believe that's going to go up, probably not significantly, but it's going to go up. And this is where we come on with the KWD has reviewed this. We've worked with them on it. They provided us the model. They've been great to work with. They provided us chlorine residuals information in their system, so we were able to calibrate the model and come up with something that we think reasonably represents what's going to happen in the real world. So the request that the KWD have here, that we'll have to make some things here, is that they want to make it clear that new customers will be charged at the standard KWD rates, like everybody else is. We will need to add some cost to this report for the KWD meter reading system. They use an automated radio read system. So we have to take a look at that and see if we need another tower or if we can just piggyback onto their existing system there. One nice thing they said is that they'd like to see the fire hydrant spacing actually increased, so that's good. We use 1,000-foot spacing. We're probably going to go to 2,000. That'll save a little money there, and it'll also save some money in the long term because fire protection charges are going to be increased, and basically the allocation is based upon the number of hydrants in the KWD member communities, a certain amount of their revenues. I'm not exactly sure what that number is. 13.3%. Thank you, Michelle. And that is just divided up among the member communities on the number of hydrants that you have there. So we'd be adding up to 30 or 40 hydrants, so that bill may go up, annual bill may go up $20,000 or $30,000. We'll put that into the report. Another good idea that the engineers at KWD had was that the typical water main we use is lined with cement lining, and it's a lime-based lining there. And it does react with the water, and it'll cause a decrease in, an increase in the pH on these long-ended lines there. And chlorine's not effective at as effective at a higher pH, so they're recommending that we may be looking at some other different linings for these long dead ends, which would be like enamel linings or something like that, you know, something that's a potable water coating inside the pipe there. We also need to add some costs for meter sets for the individual people, the internal plumbing modifications needed. We've carried costs now for service lines, but I think it's a good idea that we add those additional costs there so we're not, don't come up short there. And the last one here, which may be the most difficult one, and it was recommended in our report, also a town ordinance, you know, requiring customers to connect to the KWD if this main is installed, because KWD, even though the town of Fairfield is going to build it, pay for it, hopefully with some help, it's going to be turned over to KWD at the end, and they will maintain and operate it in perpetuity. So they need to see enough customer base out there to, so they're not putting it on their existing customers to support this. So it's kind of important. And if you looked at, I've looked at other places where PFAS, water mains have been extended for PFAS, and it's fairly typical that the town enacts like a groundwater exclusion zone where you can't drill a well in it anymore. You just have to hook up on public water there. So I think it's going to be an important part of the project to do that, because we want to make sure that we're not putting a burden on KWD and they can operate, you know, sustainably. Now to the other extensions. Up the road a little bit, we have Goodwill Hinckley, okay? And they're not part of this project now, but I've talked to them there, and they are interested in extending the main up to there. You know, they have a decent water system, but they've been expanding. KVCC's in there now, and they kind of would like to get off of that system, okay? And I do believe that's included in the draft report, but in the between the time we submitted the draft report and now, SAPI has reached out to us too, and they're very interested. They reached out a couple of times now. I was actually talking with their engineer today about how much further it would be to go for them and how much the cost would be. Of course, they're interested in cost sharing, and I said, well, it may be something we could do under economic development, but I guess, you know, for right now,
Right.
we just want to know that you're interested, and we'll have to get to the details later. I would like permission when we have the final draft to share this report with both the people at Goodwill Hinckley and SAPI. You know, for two reasons. I mean, Goodwill Hinckley doesn't really want to operate a water system, and the increase in use out there is going to help maintain the water quality there. SAPI is talking about taking 200 gallons a minute around the clock, which is a significant amount of water, and should really, really help not only just the expanded part of the system, but other parts of the KWD system that have low chlorine residuals now. So, yeah, so both of those, people have expressed interest there, and I think it's a good thing, because it kind of, Jim and I were talking a little bit about funding, and I've been turning it over to him. I mean, you've got, you almost got the perfect trifecta here. You've got a contamination source where people's water are contaminated that always scores high when you're trying to get funding, and you've got other people interested in this for economic development and other reasons. So, and you've got the water district on board, so it's a good project. It's just shockingly expensive. Yeah.
Just $40 million.
Just $40 million,
Just
right?
$40 million.
And I would take any questions now, but at this point I was going to turn it over to Jim, and Jim is the funding guru, so he's going to talk to you about maybe some potential sources of funding that we can look for to basically make this project a reality. And this document here, once it's finalized and approved by the town, KWD, this would be our document basically for shopping that project. So if there's no questions, I'll just turn it over to Jim right now.
I just have a
Yeah.
compliment. This is the second time I've read one of your reports, and I am so impressed with the quality that you have done, and it's easy to understand. I've read it cover to cover, and just your attention to detail is amazing, and I appreciate that, so thank you very much.
Thank you, because I'm actually a geologist, and geology is full of big words, and I try to avoid them whenever possible, because there's always an easier way to say it that's more understandable. Yeah.
It's a great report. It did just exactly what you guys said you were going to do, and just exactly what we needed you to do. So,
Thank you.
It's a great report.
Yeah.
Here you go, Jim.
All right. So it's a lot of money for small town, medium-sized town, central Maine. It is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of what the USDA, the federal government funds for water treatment plants around this country. You'll see it all the time, $60 million wastewater treatment plant, $50 million. So if we think about where the money can be coming from, federally subsidized monies, it's not obnoxious. So the major sources we have for something like this are the Drinking Water Program, State Revolving Loan Fund, EPA funds, USDA Rural Development. We've spoken with them. They would look at this. We could apply through them. Northern Borders Regional Commission, certainly for economic development along 201. So there are certain pieces. We don't have to look at this project as a whole for one funding source. We can use every one of these funding sources. We can break out the 201 corridor for economic development for CDBG and Northern Borders Regional Commission. There's a lot to figure out still about funding, but the other thing that's going on is the timing of this is good for a lot of reasons. It's the stimulus package, the ARPA money. I know the community has ARPA money, the county has ARPA money, the drinking water program has ARPA money. I spoke with, one of the key things that I'd like to share, I spoke with Bill Dawson earlier today. Bill Dawson is the head of the funding package, if you will, for the drinking water program. And he informed me that federally, the federal government has dedicated $800 million a year for the next 5 years for dealing with emerging contaminants. Maine is a 1% state. That means we get 1% of that. So we will get $8 million a year for 5 years, specifically for addressing emerging contaminants in drinking water. And that includes extension of water mains, modifications to water systems. Now, they are still figuring out how to spend this money fairly and equitably. I will tell you this, that money is 100% principal forgiveness, which is essentially a grant. Right now, everybody's eyes are on Fairfield and some other areas, but we have just started testing all water supplies in Maine. By the end of this year, the first round of testing will be complete. So the universe of PFAS contamination could grow. So one of the things that Bill said to me is, right now they're writing their intended use plan, but one thought that they bounced around is that no one applicant will qualify for more than 50% of the annual allocation, so that they make sure they reserve enough money for other folks. But right now, you guys are essentially the big fish in the pond. And I would suspect you would be eligible and likely to get a good share of that. Bill told me that they expect to get requests for projects out in March or April this year, at which time we'll be ready to apply. We'll have a final report that supports our application. We'll have updated numbers, and we'll be ready to apply. You can apply every single year. So that is a big pot of money that could help provide sufficient grant or significant grant money for this. You can match that with clean water, drinking water SRF funds, which also qualify for principal forgiveness. USDA has grant programs, grant loan programs, Northern Border. So we've got a lot to figure out in where the money's going to come from. And I believe that's really our next effort once we update these cost estimates, finalize this report, is to sit down with Garmin, with Michelle, with these funding agencies, the head of each one of them. We do this often where we'll bring them all into a meeting at once, everybody around the table, and talk about the ideas and the best way to put funding packages together to maximize grant money. Everybody in the state of Maine on these funding, they work really hard to get the communities the money they need, and they're really good to work with. So we benefit there. So in a nutshell, I can't guarantee you $40 million of grant money. I just can't. I don't think anybody could guarantee that today. But I certainly think you're looking at a good chunk of it being grant money by the end. But there will need to be some loan money tied to that more than likely. So
You don't know that, though.
I don't know that. I don't.
You don't know that.
But I like to, there's only been a few projects in my career, I've been with Dirigo 20 years now, that I've seen 100% grant.
Right. Manage expectations.
But
So on the inverse, it could end up being a significant loan.
I can't answer it until applications go out, and you have to apply every single year. You could pick away at this over years, but I can't answer that right now, unfortunately. There's a lot to figure out. One of the things that will factor in is what amount of grant money you get. USDA likes to look at it like how much you can afford. So they'll look at the whole amount, how much you're borrowing or getting granted to you, what the rates are going to be, what the impacts might be to taxation. They factor that on a number of different equations and come up with what they think you can afford to borrow reasonably and stay within state averages, within regional, communities of similar size. They look at all those aspects.
I just wanted to say that in that report, we assumed the worst case condition, no grant money.
Correct, and we factored what would happen with taxation, whatnot. We always look at it like if
Yeah.
you've got none, this is where you're starting. So
Would've
worst
been
case scenario, it's good.
14% tax increase.
Yeah.
Correct.
But the other thing that's still floating out there, and it really hasn't come clear what it's going to be or anything else, is the stimulus package that they passed in Washington. And there is a few $1 trillion in there.
Yeah. You're right. There's still another, there's still more to come.
Right.
But again, that goes back to the fact that we are in a prime spot to get started. So one of the
Yes.
concerns I've had over the course of the last 6 months is that as the state continues to expand their testing throughout the entire state, we now are, it's a terrible thing to say, but when you're talking about trying to get free money, we may no longer be the hot spot, and somebody else could take that away from us, which, don't get me wrong, nobody should have to have. But the other piece of this too is like Jim mentioned, no one municipality will get 100% of the funding that's out there. So if you're only eligible for 50 max, and then the way this typically works is they will feed grant funding into 10 municipalities over feeding it into one. If you can help 10 communities with the same amount of money, they will do it. That's just what will happen. And it makes sense. I mean, if you have to crunch the numbers, how many people did you serve with that money? It makes sense. Which is why it's important that we just continue to keep going forward with this and try to pursue
Yes.
every free dollar we can find.
Yeah.
You
think you're on a good timeline right now?
I think we are on a good timeline right now, and one of the best things about this report that was done is it is done not only in phases 1, 2, and 3, but every phase was sectioned out by every particular road, so that, say at the end of the funding piece, you realize, when we don't have enough money to go down this street this year. And we hold that, and we put that, maybe that goes into the next phase, because maybe we can get more money in year 2, or maybe we can get more money in year 3. This whole report was designed this way so that we could be as flexible as possible, because it was truly contingent on whatever we could find for funding. I do know that there are a bunch of folks pulling for us for funding in those places, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we get it, so, but.
But one of the things that we could start with this year, you may be one of the, and you likely would be the biggest applicant for this emerging contaminants grant funds, and if there aren't a lot of other applicants, they may be willing to increase what you get for grant money. That's one of the things I'm going to watch very closely with them. The potential of doing, and if they do know we're going to hold the line at 50%, so maybe you do a $4 million project, 100% grant, you don't borrow anything this first year. You do half of phase 1. You can break these phases up, just like Michelle said. So we're certainly going to look at a way to start there and get off the ground early.
Right, and because these projects are just, these funding opportunities are just now rolling out, that's why this meeting that they had mentioned with USDA and Northern Border and all of those is very important, because we do need to get in front of them so that they understand just exactly what we're looking at with this full report, so that they're also thinking, this project is out there. Because while filtration systems are being installed and the state of Maine is maintaining them, we all know that they're only going to maintain them for as long as funds hold out. And as they continue to expand throughout the state, the funds are not going to hold out forever. And it's truly the only solution I have found anywhere, that any of us, I think, have found. I mean, and they, like Ricky said, they looked at all these various different options of, our own water source and all those things. And we just don't see anything else.
Right, and it's a tough one, because it was the state initially that approved all this stuff and let it go.
That's right.
I'd like to make another point, though, about Fairfield situation. I haven't done detailed analysis of where there's other PFAS contamination. I know we have in Dalton, we have in Unity, we have in Benton.
Yep.
But you have KWD here, and you have an option. Some of these places, Unity.
Don't have it.
They don't have an option.
Yeah, house, I mean, they got no water district at all, so, yeah.
Right. So I think that there may not be as many people trying to grab this pie as we think. I think Fairfield's positioned well to, like you said, a large piece of it. Because there is a solution here.
Yeah, I mean, those people out there, the best they can do is get their wells filtered and maintain it.
And I'm sorry, I missed the time frame. When is that meeting with the other groups?
We haven't scheduled it yet. So really, this report has been done. Being new to the council, I probably should have given a little bit of history for you, Matt, I'm sorry. This report is still in its draft form. This meeting needed to happen. We needed to get the feedback from the water district for them to finalize all of this and get that started. And then, what could have happened at the end of the day is they could have done this report and the council could have come back and said, we absolutely just can't afford it. And that would have been the end of it. Nobody thought that that's where we were going to end up, but that is still a that was a possibility. And so once this is done and we know that this is where it needs to be, that's when that meeting would be scheduled and get everybody in the room. Garvin Donegan from the Central Maine Growth Council, him and I have also been talking about, the funding streams, and we're going to sit down with Dirigo and make sure everybody's on the same page, because there's a lot of outreach to be done. There's some legislative outreach, because while Maine's a 1% state, that doesn't mean that a bigger state uses all of its money, and that stuff becomes fluid after a while. So having these meetings with all of these people is important. Having these conversations is important with the decision makers, not only at the local, state level, but also at the federal level.
Thanks for the explanation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So what are the next steps, Jim?
The next steps is to address KWD's comments. We just got them last week, the end of last week, so this meeting tonight, we will update this report, finalize this report. We will send it to these funding agencies so they have an opportunity to review this, get their head around what we're looking at which point we'll schedule a get-together. We'll probably get together with local representatives first to come up with a game plan of who the point of contact is going to be with the funding agencies, how that's going to be handled so that we're not duplicating efforts.
Right.
And you know, we have a common voice moving forward. Those are the next steps at this point.
That, and then, so if all goes according to plan, so you take money right out of the equation. The next step would be, once the plan is finalized, would be to move on to the design phase. Okay, so now you have an explanation of what the project would be, but the project still needs to be designed. So the actual documents that would be used for construction. That would be the next phase, would be design phase for us.
So can you go for grants without that design phase in place?
You can.
Okay.
It's actually more common that way because most communities can't afford to pay for the design until they get their funding for the project.
Right.
Yeah.
And there'll be a few other things we need to do in there, environmental reviews. There's going to be a few permits required to go across some of the streams.
Yep.
And we'll have to get some permits from the DOT for their main street roads.
Hear him.
They require utility location permits. That too. So there's things that also need to be taken care of before it
Correct.
goes to bid.
Yeah, so for those at home listening who couldn't hear, there's also a bunch of permits that would have to come into play through various different state and federal agencies. So there are things to be done. So one of the things, one of the reasons why we got this sum up page for phase one, Jim and I were talking this afternoon, and I don't know why I missed it. I'm sorry. I probably should have asked for it a while ago. So, but your preliminary engineering and design section for phase one is roughly $335,000. And no joke, you just received $345,997 in ARPA money. And they did not know that number when they created this report. So that's for our first half of our ARPA funds. So
Okay.
we need to finalize everything, but there's still an option where you could actually, not knowing what the timetables are going to be for these grant applications and when they're going to award, if we start running into timeframes, you have the ability to probably start your design phase knowing we have anticipated grant funding coming afterwards. So it's a possibility. Those are things that are going to continue with conversation. But really, tonight's piece was for you to answer any questions that you had about this report, have them an opportunity to explain what they've done, and then whether you want us to go forward or not is really the intent.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions or?
Are we supposed to
cetera.
talk about whether or not we want to move forward while Dirigo is here?
I don't think we have a choice.
You're not going to leave unless you do.
Yeah, my feeling is, yes, we need to go forward with this. My two biggest concerns are, of course, the monies as well as the ordinances. And I really think if we make this effort, we need to hear from townspeople. And we also need to be aware that if we do this, there is a cost and people need to participate. And that's a discussion for us to have as a council.
Yep.
It should,
Go ahead.
the public hearing specifically for the people that will more than likely be required to connect and have a quarterly bill that they don't have now, absolutely should be one of the very first things done, so that everybody's on the same page. I agree with that.
And right now, we haven't really had enough of, we need to have some kind of forum.
Yes.
And it's also concerning those people, like on Bickford Drive, there's only one house that tested positive. But what about the other 4 or 5 houses? Can they still sign up for the water? And we need to hear from people. And that needs to come about soon.
And just to answer that question, those other houses are actually included in that cost.
They are.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not just that one house?
It's not just that one house. It's to connect all of those houses.
Oh,
So
well, that's good
so
then.
that's the other piece. So you have to remember, when you look at these roads and the cost estimates that are in here, it is not just to hook up the people that are contaminated. The cost estimates are to hook up everyone on that street.
Okay.
460 customer connections.
Every single connection.
And that's important for people to realize, like what you just said, Michelle. We're not guaranteed state funding for their filter systems till eternity.
Right.
So once the money runs out, what's going to happen then? And, I've got public water, but I don't have public sewer, but I still have to pay for sewer costs every year, every 2 years. The septic has to be pumped,
Oh, right.
I
was like, we don't send you a bill. I can, but.
No, you don't need to. But my point is, even if you have well or a filter system, you're going to have to pay something in the long,
Well,
in the
there's a
end.
couple of things too. Just because you tested below the maximum contaminant level today does not mean you will next year. Groundwater contamination has a habit of spreading. We don't know where it's going to go. It would take a massive hydrogeological study to predict how that would spread. But property values right now and marketability of trying to sell a home in this area, as we all know, is impacted. So those are things that this would solve. It would
That is another
improve property
plus.
values and marketability. Right now, there are people
Yeah.
probably out there that want to leave that can't, because who's going to buy that house? So there's a lot that goes into solving that, and that's why we
Yeah.
looked at doing, everybody in this area will get served.
Okay, thank you.
And it's also critical for the ongoing operations of the KWD to have as much customers as possible out there.
It is, because when you look at the numbers of this, some people might say KWD's getting windfall, they're getting all this free system, and they're going to get the rates. Well, they're not. The cost to operate and maintain that system will require additional employees, it will require additional maintenance, additional depreciation of that entire facility. They are not going to walk away from this with a windfall and extra money. So just,
But they have the capacity, which
Right.
was the original concern, was whether or not they had the capacity to even do this.
And they're willing to do it.
And they are willing to do it. And so one of the things is, that's what also makes it good, is so, like, the Maine Drinking Water Foundation, it's actually the utility that has to apply for that money. The municipality cannot. We're not eligible. It has to be the utility itself. So there are a bunch of different things. So, like, when we said, it's not, none of this money is going to come from all one pocket. It's going to have to be a whole range of people and players and stuff to organize and put together. So it's going to be a big undertaking, definitely.
Right, so what I'm hearing then probably is, from our municipal standpoint, we need to get community input. That's one of the first things. I'm all in favor, John, of
Yep.
proceeding with this endeavor. I don't know how everybody else feels, but,
My question was on the ordinance for public drinking water from the town that requires any new system be connected?
No, it was,
It would require any place that the pipes went by would have to connect. That in and of itself, that ordinance is going to take some legal legwork. how that can be done.
I see some
I do.
pushback on that.
I do as well. However, again, we have factored in the cost of that for someone. So if you were sitting at home and you have a well, and you have a pump probably that you have to maintain, and you don't know from one day to the next whether or not, while your drinking water is fine today, is it going to be fine tomorrow? Or you can hook into the town water system.
Yeah, I hope so, because you're not even coming close to my house.
Well, sorry. Maybe one of those expansions, you don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so, no.
But, so for that piece of it,
Right.
it would guarantee them that. So in the other pluses of this, so they briefly touched on, this was designed also with hydrant installation. So you think about the fact of homeowners insurance, if you're anywhere near a hydrant service, that has a
That's
tendency to
going to be
change.
that will make
changes
a
our
big
insurance
difference in
rating.
insurance rates,
You know,
because
so our insurance ratings
you've got to
really-
be within so many feet of
Yep.
a hydrant in order to receive a decent rate. If not, then you drop down to another.
Right. So that will
Another
change
level.
that. So
Yep.
fire protection throughout the entire community will improve. House insurance rates will drop. So there's those sort of pieces. We did Zone 201 commercially recently, so parts of all of that, most of those commercial services, they need hydrants, and you need that water supply.
Yep.
We have a lot of prime acreage on 201, but right now, there's a question. Do you bring in a new business and do you drill a well? Do you? Probably not. You're going to wait, because commercially, remember, every business, if you had a well that tested positive in your business, the state of Maine did not install a filtration system for you.
That's right.
It only was the residential properties, none of the commercial properties. And so those are the things. And when the state of Maine has to come and feed, they change out your filtration system and it's $2,800 a visit, or are you going to pay maybe $500 a year in water bills, or $2,800 to have your filter system taken out? So, because there's just absolutely no way that the state is going to be able to sustain management of those systems
Right.
forever. It's just not going to happen. So, but there is a lot, and that is where the community piece comes in. But it's finalizing this report, getting some more details, meeting with some funding organizations, what do those things look like, and then be able to have that conversation with people and promote this information. When this report is done, it'll be on our website. Everybody can see it. We'll put it on our PFAS page, and everybody can see that, and we can entertain those questions and those sort of things. You would never do a must-connect water ordinance without having a public hearing anyway. You absolutely have to.
Yeah.
So those would be other big things that we would have to do, and book the gymnasium.
But we haven't even really had a chance to talk with people that have been affected.
Right.
And we need to open up that dialogue.
I've had a lot of conversations with folks in the region who are very happy that this is something that we're working in. Once we kind of knew what the prices were going to be, it's a sticker shock piece. That's why we say it's just 40 million. That's why we say that. Because if you think about how big of a number that actually is, it's quite depressing. But like Jim had mentioned, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a number when you think about the fact that we will put public drinking water to almost the entire community of Fairfield. And on some larger scale projects, it's not nearly as big as what it could have been. So that's a good thing. And it also, protects us for the ability to have future development. What happens when the state says we're not going to maintain the filters anymore, and people leave the homes because they can't afford to maintain the filtration systems anymore, and then you have nothing. And so it's a way to protect the community and where it needs to go. And again, you could be negative today, but nobody guarantees you'll be negative tomorrow.
There's going to be a lot of work, there's going to be a lot of discussion, but what is our job is to take care of the health and welfare of this community. And I think there's only one way to move forward, which is move forward this project. So that's our job.
And I agree.
Absolutely.
Is that the council's consensus to be reflected in the minutes? Move forward?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So our next steps will be then to sit down, get this document finalized, and start working on a plan for our outreach. And I'm sure you'll be hearing back from all of us in the next month or so. Well, you'll be hearing from me, definitely, but we'll get back to this topic probably in another month or so with a really good update for
Right.
as to what's going on.
Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more information on some of the money coming down from Washington.
Yes, and where, like I said, the Emerging Contaminants Grant Funds request is going to be out here in a few months. We need to be ready for that.
Right.
And so part of that is going to be finalizing that. Part of that is hopefully we have a public hearing, public information meeting before that in the next couple of months, because that scores points. That you've got public backing, you've got community support. This isn't just, one person's idea.
Correct.
Right. Again, thank you for the work
All
that
right.
you're doing for us.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Welcome.
we'll see you again soon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
I'm looking
Yes, thank
forward
you
to
much.
working with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Good.
Oh, we're going to make that.
You're the optimist.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, so we will move on now after the presentation. We'll move on to our first order of business. And our first order of business is public announcements. And details may be found at www.fairfieldme.com. All right, for the first part of the first order of business is for the 2019-2020 tax foreclosed property acquired by the town on January 24th, 2022, the 30-day buyback period. All outstanding debts shall be paid by Monday, February 28th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. The third quarter property taxes are due February 9th, 2022, and may be processed online, over the phone, mailed, or via the drop box located at 19 Lawrence Avenue. And on number 3, the Somerset County Budget Committee Membership Caucus will be held on February 9th, 2022 at 6:15 p.m. in council chambers.
People can pay their taxes in person, too.
Pardon?
Oh,
They can pay their taxes in person
In
as well.
person? Yes.
Like, this is missing from the list.
that's
Okay.
copy paste. I'll add that right now.
All right. Then moving on to our public second order of business, which is public hearings. And has the manager overview Zoom protocols to participate?
So we have no members of the
nobody
public
on
here
Zoom.
in the building, and the only person online joining us, well, I don't say only, but Garvin is online joining us, and I'm guessing he's not going to participate in our public hearing, so
Right.
we can kind of skip that part at this point.
Okay, I'll just announce it then. To hear public comments on authorizing the municipality to accept and adopt. Number 1, pursuant to 30-A MRSA, Chapter 2501.3, the town of Fairfield hereby accepts and adopts the provisions of 21-A MRSA, Chapter 696.2.c, and 21A, Chapter 722-A, as amended, as governance for write-in votes. Votes for a write-in candidate are counted only if that candidate has filed a timely declaration of write-in candidacy with the municipal clerk in accordance with 21A, Chapter 722-A. Except that votes for write-in candidates who have not filed a declaration of write-in candidacy must be counted if the printed ballot does not include a properly nominated candidate for the office, or a properly nominated candidate for the office listed on the ballot withdraws from the race before or on Election Day. I will declare the public hearing open. Anybody wish to speak must give their name and address. There being nobody in the room and nobody on Zoom other than one person, I will declare this public hearing closed. Third order of business, public comments, limit 3-minute equivalent to public speaking. Members of the public may email comments for the council at info@fairfieldme.com by 4 p.m. day of meeting on any topic or agenda item. Items may be read aloud at this time. Were there any items that we received?
None.
Okay. The fourth order of business, reports from staff and committees. Town manager report.
All right, so on January 13th, I attended the Mid-Maine Chamber breakfast. The guest speaker was Governor Mills to discuss the state of the state's economy. And at the very end of Governor Mills' presentation, I just want you to know that Kim Linloff did not allow her to leave the podium without mentioning to her that Kim lives in Fairfield, and while Kim has public drinking water here in Fairfield. A lot of the people she knows does not, and that the governor needed to do all she could to ensure that she fixed the situation here in Fairfield. So there are lots of people out there plugging for us every chance they get. I didn't even have to say a word. So, and then on January 18th, I did attend the KVCOG Board of Directors meeting. In between all of there's been some various vacation days, holidays, and sick days, and the rest of it has all been just budget, and everything else we'll discuss the rest of the night, so.
Okay, very good. Any committee reports?
The Economic Committee is going to meet on Tuesday at 3 o'clock here in council chambers.
Okay. Anything else? There being none, we'll close the fourth order of business and go to the fifth order of business, which is the consent agenda. Now, these items are considered routine or standard business and therefore will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussions on these items unless a council member so requests prior to consideration of this portion of the agenda, in which event the item would be removed from the consent agenda and considered on the next agenda. Was there any? There being none. Item 22-04, order that the town council hereby waives the reading of and accepts the minutes of the meeting number 2021-19 held on December 8th, 2021. 2205, ordered that the town council hereby approves a treasurer warrant number 44, general fund, in the amount of $102,481.93. Not limited to, but including MMEHT, any salt, motor vehicle, and MSAD 49 fuel. Item 2206, ordered that the town council hereby adopts amendments to the town council administrative policy and addendum A fee schedule. Item 2207, ordered that the town council hereby adopts amendments to the personnel policy. Item 22-08, ordered that the town council hereby adopts amendments to the code of conduct. And 2209, ordered that the town council hereby adopts the town council goals and standards for 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any, all in favor? Carries full. Moving to the sixth order of business, which is to take action on the following items of business as read by me. Ordered that the town council hereby select recipient of the annual town report dedication. And I am looking at Jeff Marshall. I have his obituary with us, and he was a tremendous man, did tremendous amount of good for this community and for actually for the state of Maine within the level of softball for younger people, particularly in the ladies area, and was just a phenomenal person, phenomenal man. So I would make a motion that we accept Jeff Marshall.
I'd second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Carries full. So Jeff will be the recipient of the annual town report dedication. Item 2211, ordered that the town council hereby nominate recipient of the annual Spirit of America Award.
I'll make a motion for Tom Munson, the Spirit of America Award.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion or?
I've worked with Tom on the Economic Committee, and very thorough, very optimistic. Definitely loves our town, and I think it would be it's been an honor to work with him, as I feel it will be an honor to have him receive the Spirit of America Award.
Anybody else? All in favor? Carries full. All right. 2209. Ordered that the town council hereby adopts town council goals and
No,
standards.
2012.
2212.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went up one. That's all right. Too many small things on this one, and no glasses. All right, 2212. Ordered that the town council hereby appropriates up to $44,789.59 from the Police Capital Equipment Reserve and Police Reserve account equally for the purchase and outfitting of one new police vehicle. Do I have a
Motion.
motion?
Motion to accept as read.
Okay. Need a second?
Second.
Okay. Yes, Chief, you may speak.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
Okay, first of all, this is planned in the budget. It's not an unexpected expense. You are finding that the truck is better than a card like that big Ford one, Ford Explorer thing? That you,
Director
have-
Williams from Public Works is very excited that we're going with the Fords because of, because of the amount of service that with the Ram pickup trucks, because of the amount of service that the the Fords require. Sorry.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, the Fords are very expensive to maintain. We haven't had any issues with the Rams. There is a turning issue with it. It turns a little bit bigger or a little bit wider than the Fords do. But for the most part, the officers seem to really like them. They're easier to get in and out of. There's much more room in them. They're more efficient, fuel efficient. Doesn't seem like they would be, but they are.
now, the one that's being replaced, Chief, has, what was it, 125,000 miles?
Correct.
And it has not had a lot of the maintenance.
Has had a lot of
It
maintenance.
has had a lot of maintenance.
On average, every 13,000 miles, we put on all new rotors and brake pads,
Wow.
Yeah.
front end parts. The Ram pickups, they're, built very heavy. They handle the road really well. The Fords just aren't built, for the amount of punishment that they go through.
Right. Well, I'm all in favor of another vehicle. The only thing is, I hope that the cost is going to come out of the equipment reserve, not from ARPA funds.
No, it's not.
Because we've planned for this, so we should be using our equipment reserve funds.
I did put the wording in there and ask permission, and we thought it would be good to just bring it up. But the plan has been for the department funds to use that vehicle.
Yeah.
Where do we stand on the department funds right now?
So currently in the, let's take these in order. The capital equipment reserve for PD is $109,049. And then the police reserve account has $38,944. So he has
About 140.
about $140,000. So he has certainly enough money for this vehicle purchase. And it is part of our regular plan. We started down this road a while ago, so to ensure that we did not have anyone in dangerous vehicles. One of the great things that has happened with these Ram trucks is that, if you remember correctly, the detective's Ram happens to be one that while we use it for a couple of years and then we get a new one and sell that one out, we've made money off from
Made money
both
every year
trucks
on that
that we've
vehicle.
purchased.
Really?
We've made more money. We sell them to a municipality, and they end up bidding enough that they pay us more than what we've paid for the trucks.
Wow.
Wow.
I know.
Count our blessings.
The captain and I discussed that today. We discussed maybe purchasing another vehicle for him and selling his vehicle because his vehicle is worth so much. However, even though this vehicle is in the pipeline, doesn't mean that Ram is going to complete that build. So that's why it was sort of important for us to put this paperwork into now.
Right.
Because they at any point could just say, we don't have the materials to build this vehicle, so we're going to stop. The last time I checked, it was still available. And if we did sell the Captain's Ram, I don't think we'd be able to find anything immediately to replace it with.
Because normally we don't bring this to you until like February, March, it's
Right.
later in the season. But right now, the same with the Public Works truck that you did last month.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, if you can find one that is available that nobody has spoken for, we're just trying to snag them because the truck supply issue out there, it's real, and we don't know when we'll
Yeah,
get them.
and they also said on the news today that the whole chip situation is going to get worse,
Right.
so.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Michelle, do you have any suggestions on the funding? Whether it's a splitting on the equipment reserve and PD reserve, or do you have any comments on that?
Splitting it between those two accounts is absolutely perfect. It's what those accounts are designed for. Usually what happens is that like the decals or some of the upfitting and stuff will come out of that reserve as opposed to the truck itself coming out of the other. It doesn't deplete either one of those reserve accounts. It just spreads it equally about the two. I think that's exactly what we did with the last vehicle purchase, and it worked out very well.
I agree we don't need to use the ARP funds for this, since we have money enough to replace one if it were to get totaled out for some reason. If we did not have enough money in there for a second vehicle, I would recommend using the ARPA funds
Well, and these are
to mitigate that.
fully insurance covered as well, so that if it does get totaled, our insurance usually will pick that up. But in this in here too, like the chief said, it was in here for discussion, because, and there were things that we are investigating for ARPA funds to be used on, and I wasn't even sure when we put your agenda together whether this was even eligible for ARPA funding, but I think we've since found where it might be.
Is it a gray area?
It's kind of gray.
It's getting a little bit clearer.
So it was just, it was really in here, a big piece of it for discussion, and I think using the equipment reserves is just the better way to go. Again, there is a time frame to use ARPA funds, but it's certainly not today, so it's fine.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Any more questions, concerns? All in favor? Carries full. All right, item 2213. Order that the Town Council hereby schedules a special meeting of the Fairfield Town Council to be held in council chambers for the purpose of reviewing and discussing the draft for year 2022/23 budget on Saturday, February 5th at 8 a.m. Looking for a
Motion?
motion.
I'll make the motion that we have a special meeting on February 5th to discuss the first draft of the budget at 8 a.m.
Second.
Discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Well, I was going to say something, but never mind.
Well, you can't vote anyway.
I wasn't going to vote, I was just going to say something, never mind.
All right, go ahead and say it.
I just wanted to make sure you all saw that you did receive the preliminary draft. Your final copies will be available for you next Wednesday with some backup documentation. This was just really to give you a first real quick look. I don't anticipate any major changes between now and Wednesday. There's just some final tweaking on a few things that we need to do. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So if you have any questions about anything, let me know ahead of time too, so we can make sure we have everything you need for Saturday.
Okay. Again, I will ask, all in favor? Carries full.
And Matt, since Michelle said there's a lot of good stuff in there, that's up to interpretation, so we'll check with you later.
I'll bring the donuts.
There's some new things in there. No, we buy the donuts.
All right.
Yeah.
We bring the donuts, we bring
the
coffee.
donuts. That's right.
Right?
Coffee and donuts
Yeah.
are
We
We buy the
provided.
donuts, we buy the coffee.
All right, item 2214. Order that the town council hereby authorizes the town manager to sign a road agreement modifying Industrial Drive description on behalf of the town of Fairfield.
So moved.
Second.
That's a road agreement that,
For industrial.
So
want to...
So the land that we received from Doug Cutchins for PAL
Yes.
included the rights-of-way for the extension of Industrial Drive all the way to the Fairfield-Waterville town line. This deed has been amended at least twice already.
Right.
And this is now the third and final piece. The work was done by the folks doing the solar project on the Guimont land, because the property description that was in the original deeds was not able to actually physically able to be plotted on the face of the earth. So this has been corrected so that it is actually a plottable piece. I did speak to Mr. Guimont this afternoon, who is one of the property abutters. He also has reviewed, he has the same document, he's reviewed it, he's had his lawyer review it. It is exactly what it needs to be. For some reason, they required all parties to sign this. This comes from the solar company's lawyers for the solar installation piece. But if you notice the signature page, they had some of the counselors' names wrong, so we fixed some of it, but the dates are January. It's probably going to be February, so it'd just be easier if you just let me sign it, and we'll take care of it when they get everything done. But it's pretty simple. It's property we already have, it's just clarifying it so that it can be properly plotted on a map.
Right.
So it's still going to be on the, looking towards Waterville, it's still going to go out along the right-hand side to connect, right?
Yeah, it would still go up and around.
Up and around.
So it goes, so if you were at the PAL football fields looking at the interstate, the road goes up and around the 9 acres that we received, follows along the interstate piece, and then kind of goes across.
Yeah.
And ends at the town line over in behind, basically where the Elks Lodge is in Waterville.
Right. Goes past the Elks Lodge.
Yep. So it ends out there. And I know that there's been some conversations with the city of Waterville, and we're hoping maybe we can find a funding source where we partner, and Waterville will connect on their end and try to make that connection happen, so to cut down on the traffic congestion that's over
I was
the
going to say,
main
it'll
street.
cut down a lot of traffic.
Cut down on a lot of traffic. And then there's some other things at the end of the meeting that kind of goes along with this road piece for our discussion later on.
Yep. All right. All those in favor? Carries full. All right. Now we move to our seventh order of business, council workshop and other business. Discuss scheduling presentation from the First National Wealth Management.
Oh, I thought we took that off.
You didn't?
I misunderstood then. I didn't take it off. I misunderstood.
So we're going to be working on scheduling them to come to one of your meetings in the
Okay.
future? We just haven't done
Fine.
that yet.
Okay.
So, we'll
But
get
it's
that.
nothing that we would need for the budget
No,
process.
it's not.
so-
No. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not.
All right,
Okay.
and moving on. The next regular meeting of Fairfield Town Council will be on Wednesday, February 9th, 2022, and to be held as a hybrid meeting via Zoom in council chambers at 6:30 PM.
Do you have any other council business?
At this time, we will recess and sign all documents required.
You skipped other council business.
Around the table?
The round table.
No,
It's not written in there.
it's not written in.
Oh, it's on my copy of the agenda.
Oh, it's not on my copy.
It was just us, we don't get the updated
Yeah.
ones.
The only one would have been this, John, for the mid-May.
I'm sorry.
We got a copy of that.
Yeah,
And
And the next meeting is February, what is it, 20th?
16th.
The
at-
16th,
at the
February
Victor
16th is at the Grange.
yeah.
Business after hours.
Yeah. Now, I'm planning on going to that. So is there anybody
I have to-
else? Because
All right.
otherwise, we can't have 3 people.
Yes, you absolutely can. You can
Oh,
all go
can?
to it.
Oh, we
The only
can?
difference is we will post it.
Oh,
That's all.
Right.
And we just post the fact that there is a possibility that
Yeah.
all members of the town council would be at that
Possibility, I'm not
location.
Yeah,
So, as long as you don't get together and have
It's
a
meet-
vote on anything, it's not.
yeah, it's a meet and greet kind of thing.
Exactly, it's right in the
And it's,
center.
yeah,
Business after hours,
yeah,
normal.
food and drink.
I had one at hometown back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, I was there. Yep, so.
Okay. Anybody got anything else
No.
around the table? Start with Matt.
None. Nothing.
I'm good.
I'm good, too.
Okay. Then what we will do, then we'll move on to the next regular meeting of the Fairfield Town Council on Wednesday, February 9th, 2022, to be held as a hybrid meeting via Zoom in council chambers at 6:30 PM. And at this time, we will recess and sign all documents that require the signature of council members.
Motion to recess.
Second.
All right, we are recessed.